All commissioners are here, so we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so welcome everybody to the January 2023 meeting of the Union Township Planning Commission. Roll call, please.
Squadrito.
Here.
Albrecht. Here. Buckley.
Here.
Gross.
Here.
LaBelle.
Here.
Lapp. Here. Shingles.
Here.
Thering.
Here.
And Williams.
Here.
Okay, we're all here.
Excellent, thank you. So next item is approval of tonight's agenda. So you have tonight's agenda in front of you. There's 3 new business items, the usual reports, public comments, and so on. Is there anything else that anyone is aware of that needs to be on tonight's agenda? If not, we can approve the agenda. Have a motion to approve the agenda.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion is by Gross, second by Shingles to approve tonight's agenda as prepared. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we have our agenda. Next item is approval of the minutes. We last met on December 20th, 2022. You have those minutes. Are there any corrections to the December 20th minutes?
I believe the very first sentence, it says, regular meeting of the Charter Township of Union Planning Commission was held on, it says November 15th. Should that be December 20th?
Missed that. Yes. So the date on the beginning, at the very beginning, should be
Is there
corrected.
something, did I miss something, or?
Yeah, it also says that where is it at? Meeting was called to order at 7:04. It actually was 7.
Oh,
So 2 corrections.
thank you.
Any other items that people need? Now we can have a motion to approve the minutes as corrected.
So moved. Support.
Motion by Williams, second by Gross to approve the December 22nd minutes with the couple of small corrections at the top there. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries, so the minutes are approved. Next item, correspondence, board reports, presentations. First item, Commissioner Thering, updates from Board of Trustees.
Thank you. Really, I don't have much. Supervisor Milkey had made mention, which I know you were all aware of, is that there is a opening on the Sidewalk and Pathways Committee, and I believe that's something that we fill. So I knew we were aware, but he asked if I would just mention that. Also, and this might be something Rodney gets into, or I don't know, but one thing we did is we had an approval of a revised extraction ordinance 23-01. So that was something that we as the board approved. Outside of that, we had a lot of closed sessions, and that's what that is, so really nothing more to report.
Any questions for Commissioner Thering on trustees-related matters? Thank you. Next item is Commissioner Buckley, updates from Zoning Board of Appeals.
We did actually have a meeting in December. And I'll do my best to recap. It was kind of a lengthy meeting. It was a single agenda item. And it was for a local church in town that was looking for, it was kind of an interesting topic because it was, they were looking for clarification, a text interpretation, I guess, on some use issues in, Rodney can help me, it was the B4 district? B7 district, I'm sorry. And so ultimately, there was a few things that came out of it. The Board of Appeals did, there was a couple of sticking points in terms of how a couple of uses were interpreted. One of the sticking points that did kind of boil down to the last outstanding one was getting a better understanding of some outdoor recreation space, facilities, that sort of thing that would be tied to the church. One of the things that were recommended to the applicants was that they do proceed through the Planning Commission and bring their ideas to the Planning Commission either informally to get feedback on the projects or formally through preliminary final site plan reviews, that sort of thing. So the primary outcome of the decision at that meeting was that the Board of Appeals did affirm the text interpretation for essentially all uses except the recreation facilities, for which we essentially remained silent. We didn't issue an opinion. We didn't affirm, or I don't know what the opposite of affirm is. We didn't take that one on with the intent of giving the Planning Commission the opportunity to offer its decision on such, should the issue arise during some sort of site plan review, that sort of thing. So it was a lengthy meeting, but it was good conversation, and I think it was successful for both the candidates or the applicants as well as the board itself.
Questions from commissioners for Commissioner Buckley on that topic or any other topic? Okay. Well, I think that's one we're going to be seeing. So
Yeah, I think we will.
Useful information. All right. Next item is, and of course they're on the agenda anyway, but Commissioner Shingles updates from sidewalks and pathways.
Well, you should have a exhibit in your packet. It was a report that Rodney put together. I think we're still absent a chair for the Sidewalk and Pathways Committee. We did not meet, reported at our November meeting that our meeting before November was canceled. It was excused from the December meeting, so there's been no additional meetings at this point, but there is a report for what exactly happened in 2022. So, Rodney, I don't know if you have anything to add to that. The report is in your packet. You can see lots of work has been done. Sure.
And again, this is one of our agenda items, but any questions at this time for Commissioner Shingles? Okay, I assume we'll take that up under new business, so thank you. Next item is public comment. So at every planning commission meeting, we have a public comment near the front of the meeting, which is restricted to items that are not on the agenda. There's a extended public comment later in the meeting for agenda items, but this is for individuals who want to address the planning commission on any item that's not on tonight's agenda. If you would like to do so, we just ask you to come to the podium, give us your name and address for the minutes, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Public comment on non-agenda items is open at 7:09. And seeing none, we'll assume that folks that are here for other purposes, so we'll go ahead and close that back up at 7:10. So we're ready to move on to new business. So we have our first new business item is what has become an annual event, which is the meeting with the members of the Sidewalks and Pathways Prioritization Committee to discuss sidewalk projects, future priorities, and so on. So I don't know if Rodney and or Peter has anything you'd like to say by way of introduction on this, or whether we just jump right into it.
Just to make a quick comment, as was noted, that you have a memo in your packet that essentially outlines sidewalk projects that were completed in 2022, and then also lists various projects that are, most of which are budgeted for in the fiscal year 2023 budget already. These are generally items that have been discussed previously by the Sidewalk and Pathways Committee and identified as priorities in previous years. We have Commissioner Shingles, of course, from the committee, and we also have Phil Hertzler from the Sidewalk Committee with us tonight. So with that, I'll turn the time back over.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, this is actually more or less an open discussion. We have had these, as I mentioned, in recent Januaries, and so floor is basically open. I guess I'd ask either Stan or Phil if there's anything you'd like to say by way of introduction, anything you were hoping to accomplish with this discussion. And likewise, I'll open the same to commissioners, but maybe hear from you all first. Any concerns, anything you want to bring to our attention, anything?
Well, I've yet to attend a meeting because I was appointed in either September or October, and our November meeting was canceled. So the only issue that we have right now is Red McDonald stepped down as the chair. So we're the chair currently. So I've not attended the meeting yet.
Okay, fair enough. Phil?
I don't have anything in particular to bring to you. I was just pleased to look over the projects that have been completed and those that are anticipated to be worked on. Especially interesting with some of the short little connectors connecting neighborhoods on the east side. Just like to see more of that happening.
Yeah. I thought it was an impressive list of projects. I mean, I think it's more than has been correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought it was more than has been the case in recent years.
There is actually the total amount budgeted for sidewalks is well over $1 million between various funds.
Okay. So I'll open it up. Any questions or comments from commissioners? Any thoughts?
Just from reading the report, it appears that, and maybe this is a Rodney Peter question, there are a couple of projects that do not have proposed dates of completion. Most of them do, but 13 does not, and nor is 13, and the other one was 15. So those two do not have potential completion dates.
So number 13 is let's call it a private project. It's associated with development to the Mid-Michigan College athletic fields. That project, they can move forward with that at any time they choose. My understanding is they are planning to do work in the spring on that project, but when the sidewalks will go in as part of that is not been decided yet. The number 15, East Broomfield Road and East Bluegrass Road. This is actually one of our oldest projects. I'm aware of plans dating back to 2015. I think it actually dates earlier than that. This is basically picking up pieces, missing sections of sidewalks on both of these roads. And this is a project that was hung up with our prior engineering firm. They were unable to get easements. We've been unable to get easements to be able to put those sidewalks in. So that's why at this point it doesn't have dates. We have a new engineering firm that's going to be trying to pick up some of that slack and try to move some things forward. But it has been a significant challenge on those two roads to get easements.
So I guess we need to note for the record that it has been budgeted for 2023. We just don't know when it's going to happen because of the factors you just, but okay, gotcha.
You did say there's a little over $1 million budgeted for these projects.
It's actually, I think, I would say well over $1 million. Between the general fund and our, in this case, our East EDA fund has some projects in it as well. So between the two, there's well over $1 million.
Thank you.
I should probably know this because I literally drive past it every day, but there is have the sidewalks that would I guess be in front of, is it Dozers now on the corner? There were supposed to be sidewalks on the south side of M20 going down Lincoln, going south on Lincoln, that would have been part of the project. The site plan been part of the site plan that was approved years ago now. Is that project, are those there? Have they been completed? I can't remember.
No, they've not been completed. Have had conversations with Mr. McGurk about those projects. He had expressed concern about putting those sidewalks in because he did not want to do the intersection. The challenge is when you put the curb returns in at the intersection, you have to do basically all sides. And he said, well, I can't do the other side of the road, it's not my property, that sort of thing. He was also concerned about putting sidewalks in along Lincoln because of plans that the road commission had to widen that stretch of Lincoln Road. I discussed with him that, first of all, there are no plans, there is no budget for road widening along Lincoln. The West DDA district actually put in the curb returns on the intersection. Those are,
yeah.
You'll see at each corner. That was a West DDA project. And so at this point, we have made it clear to Mr. McGurk that he needs to finish his work.
Because there was a 5-year time limit on.
He was supposed to do it in this 2022 construction season.
So do we anticipate, should that be on the list for 23?
I did not include it only because I had not gotten specific word from him as to when he was going to be putting those in, and I didn't want to put something down that was inaccurate. So it is, yes, another project that I said should have been done this year. It was not, but he is obligated to do it.
So, and this is a question kind of just generally speaking as well, not just for his sidewalks, but for any other sidewalks that we were essentially to call in and say, hey, it's time to install these. What's our mechanism again for saying, hey, you can't, there has to be some sort of date on this? I mean, how does that work? If any private landowner or business says, yeah, I know I'm supposed to do that, I'm just not going to do it, what happens next?
Well, in terms of his case, I think there's some agreements in place associated with
Right.
those particular projects or that particular project. We have back in 2020, we had some sidewalk projects that we did call in. Several of those were completed. Two of them actually, we actually took on as part of the West EDA project. Two of them were on Remus Road in front of businesses there. And the West EDA made a decision to put in the sidewalks along both sides of Remus Road from Bradley to Lincoln. And so we essentially took those back, and so we will take care of those. And West EDA paid for those sidewalks to go in. We have one project that was a residential condominium project, but that the sidewalks were called in. They have not been installed. We have worked with the owners there. The problem is the developer is no longer in the picture, so it's the individual homeowners now that are responsible through their association. So we continue to work with them and see if we can find a solution to get those done.
So if you bear with me, and I'm not trying to be a pain, but if the expectation and the longstanding expectation for sidewalks and pathways, not just recently, is that if any kind of forbearance or any kind of forgiveness or leniency was given, that when it got called in, they got called. Why would the township be paying for sidewalks that have long stood as the legal responsibility of the owner?
Yeah. I appreciate that. So, you know, we have two downtown development authority districts, the East District and the West District. One of the elements that DDA can work on is public infrastructure improvements. In this particular case, with these two properties, one of the challenges that came up was what I just mentioned earlier about intersections and how if you put a sidewalk and a curb ramp to the street, you have to do the return on the other side of the street. Even if there's no more sidewalk, there has to be a refuge for the pedestrian on the other side of the street. Well, these business owners don't own the other side of the street. And so it became a challenge, in particular in that area along Remus Road. One of them, literally the other side of the street, was the city. It became a challenge to try to figure out how could we require them to put these in without creating this requirement for off-site improvements that was really not appropriate to be asking for. In this case, because the West DDA and their ability to put in infrastructure, we also looked at it from the perspective of, can we find a way to do this where we can design the entire project at once, both to have efficiency to design the whole length, but also to deal with some of the challenges. There are one particular property had drainage. There's pretty significant drainage challenges that we had to work around. That also increased the cost very significantly. So the decision was made ultimately for the West DDA to do that as a public infrastructure project, similar, quite frankly, to projects that were done in the East DDA years ago.
And I'm not necessarily against, certainly, I mean, in reality, I would like to see the DDAs be able to save their money and build even more sidewalks or assist in facilitating those hidden expenses or that sort of thing. I just don't want to see us creating a situation where if you wait long enough, somebody else is going to do it. But I guess my point is as we get into the master planning, if there's anything that the planning commission can do that would help to create more teeth or to create more enforcement, then certainly I think that's probably something we should consider when those kind of tickets get called and there's an expectation that something must be done, even if we have to find a way to help facilitate a portion of it, I guess. So
it brings up an interesting point. Actually, this is not something that was in the memo about the master plan review, but I would encourage you to consider it. That is, we have a policy right now, as you mentioned. We have a policy where we can grant temporary relief from construction. Sidewalks are still required, we're just not requiring them right now. And that policy has certain parameters to it. Property in the industrial district currently is one of those that relief can be granted. There's several other criteria. Right now, that policy is kind of, I'd say, freestanding. It was created in relation to trying to administer the sidewalk ordinance. I think it would be worth considering developing a policy language that would end up in the master plan related to sidewalks, both where they should be, where they don't need to be, and essentially incorporating an updated version of that policy into the master plan. That would add teeth to that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I'll stand down for now.
Well, and in response to Commissioner Buckley's comment about the known factor that we have a project that is not completed, as a new member of this committee, I would want to know what all of the projects are that are outstanding, where the timeline for completion has expired. You just mentioned the 22 timeline on the project that he referenced. So as an additional category in this report, should there be a category that has projects that have not been completed yet, so that we have some ongoing organizational institutional memory, because you just referenced that, you would remember that, but none of the new commissioners.
Well, I remember because it was my first meeting that I ever
Yeah,
had.
that's what I mean. But we've got a lot of new people
Yeah.
that would not know that. So as we have these discussions, especially as decisions are being made around master planning, you want all of the facts. So I don't know how many of those there are. Is there one? Is there 21? I don't know, but if we noted somewhere, it at least informs us to ask the right questions, especially related to
what are the procedures when individuals are delinquent? And sometimes it sounds like they're complicated factors that preclude this from happening. It's not a resistance of individuals. Well, maybe it is, I don't know, because I've just heard one testimonial of why. There could be 100, but I think those things need to be listed so that we're more informed, especially as I, do work with the Sidewalks and Pathways Committee and bring things back to this commission, ultimately to the trustees. We want to be as informed as possible. Do we have policy, for instance, that have teeth, that require these things that people have agreed upon? These aren't handshake agreements. These are agreements that are made with provision, timelines. And if people aren't doing it, I don't even know what the enforcement procedures are. But there have to be some, I would assume. So,
And I don't know if you would agree, but I was going to suggest perhaps, if it makes sense, and I don't even know if this is the right terminology, but when we do a report like this, that we might have what might be a public infrastructure or a public kind of section. This is what the township, the municipality is doing, versus these are the private projects that have been kind of called in, that are kind of on the docket for this year or next. And detail about those might, obviously if there's extenuating circumstances that pragmatically create difficulties, then certainly it would be good to know. And I don't know if in the master plan, and again, I know we're getting kind of in the weeds here, but there may be a process that we can at least address or review extenuating circumstances that when there's a gray area, that rather than black and white, you must do this and take out a third mortgage or something, maybe there's some sort of process by which we evaluate that, I guess. I don't know, but I'm just spitballing, so.
Just out of curiosity, either Peter or Rodney, if the project you're talking about for Mr. McGurk down here, I believe on Lincoln and Remus, did you say that there was an act or law that required them to do the other side? I guess my question is, how legally, if hypothetically, say I'm the property owner down there and you've called me in to do that, how can I legally go do somebody else's property? Is there, and I'm trying to understand, because I don't know how that works.
So it's basically state rules or county, either MDOT rules or county road commission rules that would require the curb returning to the other side. And the answer to that question is exactly why along Remus Road, we chose to have the West EDA district take care of that whole length, rather than get into that question, because we really aren't in a position where we can require them, we as a township can require them as part of the action on the site plan, which is how we came to that place where they had an obligation to put in a public sidewalk. We can't require them to do that offsite work. So in the case of Mr. McGurk, as I said, the West EDA took on the responsibility for taking care of the intersection.
Yeah.
So that's a non-issue for him now.
Yeah.
He just needs to do the part he agreed he would take care of. But your question is a good one, and it is the reason why the township took certain actions on Remus Road.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
I think Commissioner LaBelle, that's actually what I'm trying to get at, is that if there's extenuating circumstances where we can strategically look and say, oh, we need to help out to make this happen, like where, whether it's the township itself or the DDA or something like that, then there's an opportunity to do so. We can at least point at that and say, hey, this person needs some assistance because there's these extenuating circumstances.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and to support that, we can't do that if we don't know.
Right.
So that's why I'm saying we should create a second an additional category, so it'll be the fourth category in this report that just lists the outstanding projects as agreed upon with a expiration timeline, maybe with a little bit of a why, what the hang-up, what the holdout is. If it's just a lack of interest in doing it, that could become a legal issue. If it's a inability because of extenuating circumstances, that's totally different, and that's where these other solutions come in. I don't know if anybody's going to advocate for a solution because a property owner just simply does not want to do it. The minute we do that, we just open the floodgates of everybody saying, I don't want to do that. Well, they'll pay for it, and we like to spend other people's money, so that's why I would like to see a list, obviously as a member of this commission, but also as the representative of the, because these are discussions that we'd be having with Phil and others that are on the sidewalks and pathways, committee, to make sure that we're ensuring that we're doing the work that needs to be done. So, support what them said. I just think we need another category to inform us, and maybe just a quick, if you can give us a guesstimate, do we have 5 outstanding, or do we have 500 outstanding?
Actually, I'm pretty sure that we talked about the 2 that are at issue. One is, as I said, a residential condo project, small one, and the other one is Mr. McGurk's project. The others have either were taken care of as part of the Reeves Road sidewalk project,
Gotcha.
or they took care of it themselves. By the way, the 2 Remus Road sites, one was a merchandise outlet and then another small office building. Those actually came before you. This was quite a while ago now, but they came before you to essentially give them back their temporary relief, and actually was taking the time to do that because of the issues that we just talked about. So with those 2, they were brought up. With regards to Mr. McGurk, we in any enforcement project, staff we communicated with him informally at this point, make sure he's reminded that it has to be done. He did acknowledge it needs to be done. We'll be working with him to get it done. Obviously, right now there's not an opportunity to do that kind of paving work, but we'll continue to work with him on it, and if needed, we'll be coming back for more robust action. But we do have, in the case of Mr. McGurk, we do have his agreement that he was going to complete it. Expect that he will, and he certainly has the ability to take care of it within his site.
So I guess the answer to my question is there are 2, correct?
Two.
Can we have those 2 listed in this report?
Absolutely. Yep.
Especially as we convene our next sidewalk pathways committee, so then everybody within that committee has that information and knows what is being advocated for or not being advocated for, whatever that might be. So it obviously just be a simple update to this, because this captures what's going to be done, what's outstanding, and now what's part of an expired timeline or conditions. Okay.
And just as a quick clarification, I know I'm dragging this on, but if possible, it would be nice to see if it's possible to either estimate or predict that, based on last year and this year's development, we think that next year and the following year, we're going to be asking these property owners, we're going to be pulling up that relief. If it's possible to forecast that, then it would be nice to see those coming, but if it's not possible, it's just, again, it's just a thought, so.
Actually, right off hand, I can't think of a project that really those conditions have changed,
Yeah.
where there is a need to adjust the relief that's in place. First of all, this commission has done an excellent job of deciding when and where, and right now, is the development projects we have in various stages or have been completed, essentially fall within the same rules that under the policy that we have in place.
Mhm.
Do you maintain a master list of all the projects that have received sidewalk relief?
We don't maintain a separate list. We do have in our we have the BSNA software. We have the building module. We keep all the records of the projects that are going through the process or have been completed. No, we don't have a separate list of just here's the relief granted. No.
Okay. Because to follow up on Brian's point, I mean, I think we've even broached this subject before, the idea of tracking these and figuring out, are we any closer to wanting to call that one in, or is it still just, like you said, kind of unchanged? And, we've also talked about the idea of, going forward to have some idea of how many of these do we have out there, and, what is their status and so on. I mean, I don't want to create additional work for you all, but at some point it might be, I could see a value in having something that we all could look at to kind of capture that.
And it might be helpful too if we're trying to, it may inform either the township or development authority to inform them as to where they may want to invest dollars, because if they invest here versus here, and again, it has to make sense for the community as well, but if they invest here versus here, they may create a link that then allows additional sidewalks to be called, or additional relief to be called in, and I don't know if that's necessarily, maybe that's interpreted as, penalizing somebody unnecessarily. I don't want to do that either, but one may inform the other, so.
And I guess the other thing I wanted, before we get too far away from Lincoln here, so I remember the discussion when we were discussing that project at the corner there, and it seems to me that was the key, one of their key arguments for why they wanted the relief was that there was this, that Lincoln was going to get widened, and they didn't know yet which side the sidewalks were going to be able to fit on, and et cetera. But now you're saying that there is no plan to widen Lincoln. So I guess what I'm wondering a couple things. One, was it just that there was a floating idea that that was going to happen at some point when we had that discussion? And also, why did they build such a wide bridge if there's no long-term plan to widen Lincoln?
Well, there has in the past been a plan for essentially bypass, a ring road.
Yeah.
Pickard, Lincoln, Broomfield, Isabella, basically serving as a ring road around Mount Pleasant. There were plans dating 30, 40 years ago back that talked about several ring roads at one point. It was a very expansive idea. Though that ring road concept was in the city master plan for a long time, I don't know if it was in a past master plan for the township. It's not really in the current one. But it was in the mind of our road commission, certainly. In fact, to the work that was done at Lincoln and Broomfield, the road work, the original designs for that were for 5-lane cross-sections on both Broomfield and Lincoln. Under that notion of that area being part of this ring road concept. The inability to get easements for that, and cost and some other factors led to some discussion and led to a change, and a recognition that was simply overkill for that road, that there was not a need for 5-lane cross sections at that intersection. And so it was scaled down to what you see there now, which is a 3-lane cross section on 3 of the legs and 2 lanes going south on Lincoln. When the bridge was put in, number one, bridges have a very long shelf life by nature. The bridge will be there 50 years from now, hopefully. And so when it was put in, there was the idea still that road would be widened at some point in the future, and so they designed the bridge to provide for that space. But as I said, there is no budget, there is no plan for widening Lincoln Road north of the bridge up to Remus Road M20. My suspicion is if work is done there, it will be done within the existing roadway space, because as I said, at the southern end, it's essentially 3 lanes. So I don't expect to be more than that at the northern end.
Mm.
It's good fishing though, right on the bridge. Plenty of room.
I'm sorry, one last thought. And by the way, the city has taken the ring road concept out of their master plan. The most recent master plan essentially says, look, we talked about this, but it's not an idea we want to pursue. And I think quite for good reason. It's not a very good concept ultimately.
Okay. Well, that's useful information, I think, for us.
And I do recall that discussion, and the other side of that was that there was a belief at the time that the corner and those lots would be parceled and sold, and developed and sold, and that sidewalk would be passed on to whoever had developed the corner there, which hasn't come to pass either. So I think that it was those two kind of thoughts together that was why there was a 5-year window put on it.
Okay. Other comments on sidewalks from commissioners? Or from our representative of the committee? Okay, ready to move on? All right, well, I think this was a good discussion. Thanks for coming in, Phil, and good luck with the committee work this year. We appreciate your service. And we'll do our best to get you a chair and get the committee back up to full strength. Do we have any applicants?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next item is our annual report to the Board of Trustees. And this is of course, if this is recorded, so it can't be too much of a secret, but this is the dirty little secret, which is that this wonderful report from the Planning Commission is written by our friends in the Township staff, but they do a great job with it, and so, seems like the best solution for all. But it's a nice list of what we did this year, but again, I'll turn it over to you all to introduce the topic, and then we'll do our due diligence on it.
Good evening, Board. Doing this list annually is kind of a trip down memory lane for myself. I don't know if it is for you guys when you go through it. Sometimes you get all these projects in your head, and I'm doing the list, and I go, oh, we did do that last year. Okay. We had a busy year, as we have had in the past. We did 3 special use permits. 2 of the special use permits were on items we haven't done before, and we had a chance to utilize our new zoning ordinance. The first, the Heirloom Grove Agritourism. That's a new type of special use that we didn't have in the previous 1991 ordinance. So that was a chance to go through that project, or type of use. We had the first in a very long time special use for a wireless communication facility. This, of course, was also with using the new zoning ordinance. We did have some language in the 91 ordinance, but this was with the new one. We had 15 site plans that we went through. Of course, that doesn't necessarily represent 15 separate projects. As you know, we have a process of going through preliminary and final site plan review. So many of those 15 were just a preliminary plan, then followed by a final site plan. We did have a few that were done combined preliminary and final. We also had a few projects that were applied as combined, but it was a better fit with the review to break them up into a preliminary and a final once we got into the review process. We did 5 applications, rezoning text amendments. We got to go through a couple of PUDs, and so that was a new concept that we got to utilize the new zoning ordinance. One for the multi-use project, the Broomfield Den, and another for the expansion of the on Broadway Prestige Center, expansion of the medical facility there. We did do a punch list, but in addition to a punch list, we did have a zoning ordinance amendment that was actually brought to us by a private party, and that was for amendments made to solar energy facilities that allowed one project to actually go forward, where the previous language that we had adopted, I guess, was too restrictive to meet the height requirements. We also, in addition to what they requested, made some changes to location and setbacks as well. We had many commissioners take part in training. We had a couple of trainings available, one by MTA, one by Michigan Association of Planning. If you do recall, we did utilize for first half of the year the Lincoln Reception Center. And then, of course, the Planning Commission decided to come back in the second half of 2022, where we have stayed here in the Township Hall into 2023. So if there's any kind of questions, any additions, subtractions, again, this is your report. I'm just happy to be the ghostwriter and do it for you.
Any comments or questions from commissioners?
Feels pretty thorough to me.
Yeah, it was a good list, and it is a trip down memory lane. Short, like recent past. I don't know whether you want to actually mention under the special use permits, mention that those are the first in that category. I think that's a useful piece of information.
I know in here it reflects that Commissioner Buckley was appointed by the Planning Commission to the Zoning Board of Appeals. I replaced him on the, you were in the pathway?
No.
So who did I replace?
I think you replaced,
Was somebody who went off there? So I don't know if that needs to be reflected, because that was appointment of the.
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Oh, Denise.
Denise,
Webster.
yeah,
Denise
right.
Webster, yeah.
Yep. Is it worth listing any of the planning commissioners should just either retired or resign from the planning commission? Do we do that? Should that be on?
Can.
Yeah. Sometimes if you're not keeping track, people come and go, and
And it should maybe reflect who, not only who retired, but who was
Named.
Named to the, yeah, so both. Wouldn't be a bad idea to have those.
Yeah, changes in personnel.
Mhm.
It seems like an appropriate thing to include. For the ones that departed, if there could be like little music in there, like the end of year, like when they show the.
Didn't walk out the door.
We also add the shortest meeting and the longest meeting, and then just take them and then add, this is the medium of now. Just joking.
You can add those. You're going to have to go through the minutes and figure
No,
it out.
oh, okay, all right. Terry, you willing to do that? No, okay. All right. Bad idea. So.
Just, the only comment I really had is, the report's great, Peter. And, we've accomplished quite a bit there. I think the one thing that I would love to, not required to, but I would love to see maybe the projects that came to you guys preliminary in a sit-down or just in conversation that maybe never made it to us, in a sense that, maybe why they didn't. So like, when I have buyers that want to come through a house, they'll give me feedback on what they liked, what they didn't like, and maybe why they're not proceeding. So I keep a list of all that so I can, service my clients and show the seller, well, this is what they didn't like about it, this is why they didn't make an offer. I'd just preference would be to have something like that, to know what's actually come to you guys that maybe never made it to fruition for whatever reason. So you could say, well, we've had, X amount of projects that came in front of us looking to do it, but they didn't meet this one didn't meet that, this one didn't meet that. Like a simple Excel sheet, something like that, or however you report you'd like to put together. Because I'd like to see maybe what we're missing out on. If anything, I know that we are, but I'm just saying that I think it would be advantageous for a lot of people to see that.
It tells the whole story.
Exactly.
I appreciate that, and I do understand why you're looking for that. I will say, folks that are kicking the tires are kicking the tires. They're calling, they're asking questions, they're thinking about something, what about, they're floating an idea. Some of those ideas are just that, they're just ideas. There are some cases where folks might come in and sit down with us and have a concept, an applicant sketch, or whatever that might be, and that napkin sketch might turn into something more. Then on Broomfield probably started as a napkin sketch, for example, and it morphed into something bigger. There are other times when napkin sketches are just that. They look at something and they ultimately do something else. We have, there was a restaurant that was looking at a site on Pickard Road, for example. They ultimately chose to take the former Green Tree Co-op site in the city of Mount Pleasant because that was a better fit for what they needed. That sort of thing happens all the time. I will say the one thing that we do is maintain confidence on these things. I mentioned that one only because it's entirely done and over with, and I happen to know the end result, that they decided to use the old Green Tree grocery site. Many times, we have no idea what ultimately somebody might do, but also, as I said, because these folks are testing an idea, looking at options, they are coming in, and we're not taking notes, we're not putting anything in writing, we're simply answering their questions, talking about their project, and giving them feedback. But it's not a case where there's any documentation of that, because this is something that's brought to us with an expectation that it's going to be kept reasonably confidential. This is a public facility, it's public government. Anything we write down is a public document and is foiable. But we do try to work with the development community to help them to be able to get the answers they need as they're making decisions, without necessarily having to be concerned about that information becoming public prematurely. So it's not a case where really we can do what you're asking us to do, because we simply don't make notes on that. At best, in our monthly reports that we do to the Board of Trustees, it might note that Peter and I met with, a developer about a project. Typically, there's not much more detail than that. We met with two projects or whatever it might be during the course of that month. And that's just because we do report to the Board of Trustees on our various activities in relation to achieving the ends, desired outcomes that they've set. So we would not be in a position to be able to provide you with the type of detail you're looking for, simply because of that element of confidentiality.
Would it make sense, and maybe you're already doing this maybe you're already doing this kind of in a variety of ways, but would it make sense just as kind of like an executive summary or like some sort of narrative associated with this report to even kind of in a broad sense say, these are some of the challenges, or these are some of the opportunities, or these are some of the trends that we're noticing, based on inquiries, based on that sort of thing, that might potentially be addressed by the Planning Commission in the future, or you know what I mean? Just broadly speaking to those. And I don't know, I know you usually bring stuff to us as it occurs, but if we're putting together a report, would it make sense to kind of draw out some of those just so they're kind of officially documented that way too? And
I would say that this is your report.
Yeah.
So it really should be the things that you're noticing,
yeah,
the trends that you're seeing.
yeah.
Rather, as I said, from a staff perspective, we do share, obviously,
Yeah.
information, frankly, in the master plan review. We shared the recommendation that we look at an economic development, a more robust economic development component to the master plan, and then talk about some of the reasons for that. But really, in terms of what this report is, it is your report, and so it really should be what you're seeing in terms of what's coming before you.
But, I think what Commissioner LaBelle was getting at was that there are conversations that take place behind the scenes that we're never aware of. and therefore we wouldn't have any way of, unless you happen to be in a field where you interact with developers, which I certainly don't, and most of us don't, we would have no way of getting information to even start to have that type of sense. And so I understand what you were saying about why it would be difficult to you know, create a detailed record of those conversations. But I guess what I would wonder would be, you know, do you keep track of how many of those occur throughout the year, more or less? Can we assume that if you were discerning patterns that were things that were relevant to us, whether it was zoning issues or planning issues or that sort of thing, you'd bring them to us?
That is correct.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, that's what a lot of this discussion over the past year or so has been about, is that, you know, is the way we do business and the way we have things set up, is that, you know, is that the best way to be doing things? Is it the best, you know, conducive to development and so on? And you know, those are probably discussions that we may want to have at some point, you know, but we need some background information, I think, in order to have those discussions.
And I think some of that can still be part of our master planning process too. It's where we're, you know, if there's a desire to better understand, you know, what it is, you know, what those desires are, you know, from developers as well as the community residents, that there are steps we can take during the master planning process to better identify those potentially, as long as we're willing to take those steps, and then we can try to be more proactive in how we the plan that we put out.
Mm. Yeah. But I do think as a record of what we did, I think this is a very good and thorough record of what we did. So it sounds like you're going to make a few small editorial additions, the personnel related, you know, appointments to other, you know, as our representative to other committees, as well as, you know, who came on the commission, who left the commission. I personally don't feel I need to see that again in order to approve it, but do you think we should wait a month and see that again and approve it then, or what?
That's entirely up to you. These are changes we could incorporate and move it forward if you're comfortable with it.
Yeah. I mean, I would be happy letting them do that and then sending it on to so it's not unduly delayed.
We need a motion.
I think so.
I'd make a motion to approve with edits noted.
I'll second.
Okay, so there was a motion by Commissioner Buckley to approve the annual report with some minor editorial changes that were discussed here by the commission, and the second was by Lapp. Any further discussion? I guess I'll ask for a voice vote on this one. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. So thank you very much for doing that, and we'll get that
Thank you.
finalized and into the trustees. Next item, our third new business item, is the big one, the one that's going to, you know, probably be with us a good part of the year, I would guess, and that is the five-year review of the adopted master plan. So you have a nice memo from Rodney here, but I'll go ahead and turn it over to him to introduce the topic, and then we'll see what we want to get done tonight.
Well, thank you very much. Everybody should have a copy of our memo dated January the 10th. It is remarkable that we are on the 5-year anniversary of the master plan. I wasn't here when the plan was adopted, but when I came aboard, it felt very new still, and frankly, it is still a very good document. But the State Planning Enabling Act, asks or requires you, as a planning commission, to crack open the document at least once every 5 years and review it. And down at the bottom of the page 1, just notes quotes there from the State Act. basically, that you're asked to review it and to make a determination as to whether it needs to be updated, or if you're comfortable that it's fine as is, that it does not need to be changed. This review process can take as long or as short as you choose. It can be very simple, yes or no type of process, to say yes, it needs to be updated, no, it doesn't. It can be take place, and we would recommend that you consider taking place over a number of meetings to really kind of look at it in detail, look at the various policies that are in the document. But ultimately, the review process would conclude with a motion that essentially says, plan needs to be updated, here's some things that we think ought to be changed, or a motion to say we're happy with it and it does not need to be updated. I've worked with a number of planning commissions. I had one community I worked in, rural township, that twice during 5-year reviews said we're still happy with it. And so that plan carried forward another 5 years each time. It is completely acceptable if you choose to take that route, that you find the plan to be acceptable in its current form and it does not need to be updated. The state act simply says that you need to do this every 5 years. There's no penalty if you choose to take 2 years to do it. There's no time frame for completion. It simply says you need to review it at least once every 5 years. So we can do this over a period of time, and I would recommend, as I said, take a look at it over a period of meetings and really have some conversations about what's in the document. We did include in our memo some questions. Second page of our memo, some questions to consider in looking at it from a policy perspective. These are not the only questions, and you certainly don't. These are not any kind of requirement that you look at these particular questions, but it can provide a good framework for discussion. The question number 5 there, what is missing, I think ultimately could be a key element as you're looking at it. What, so some of you were on the commission 5 years ago, many of you were not. What do you see now that is not addressed in the plan from 2018? Can be a very important element to your review process. We did note it, as I mentioned earlier, that there are opportunities to be more proactive from an economic development perspective. There is economic development language in there, especially the bluegrass area, and looking at that. But there are more opportunities to use the master plan as an economic development tool that we can incorporate. And I suggested that you perhaps consider an invitation to Jim McBride from the Middle Michigan Development Corporation. His perspective, I think, has some value to look at as part of this. He can certainly give you some ideas of what he's seen in the marketplace, what he's seen in trends and such, and how the township may be able to be a part of that in a more proactive way. And then finally, we did include, you made your action during your last meeting to recommend that the township participate in the state's redevelopment ready communities program. That, by the way, is on the board agenda for next week for their consideration for adoption of that resolution of intent. But as part of that, the same idea, we did include a checklist that redevelopment ready program put together for a master plan review. It's a little more involved. It has a little bit more of an economic development focus to it. You're certainly welcome to use that as well as part of your discussion. And with that, I'm happy to answer questions as we go along.
So our decision here tonight is really we're having a conversation about whether or not we want to proceed with beginning a review of the master planning, or if we're comfortable in saying, nope, we're comfortable with our current master plan. The outcome tonight is to decide that.
Well, actually, the outcome, yes, would be ultimately to have a motion that decided one or the other. The plan needs to be updated, or we're happy with the plan, it doesn't need to be updated.
Okay.
But that outcome does not need to happen tonight.
Okay.
This is really just, and I would recommend it just be the start of the conversation.
Okay.
And that you take some time over a couple meetings to at least to review the plan, perhaps use some of these questions or the checklist, and just go through it, especially from, like I said, look at the various policy elements, the goals and objectives and policy statements that are in the plan, and see where you are, both as individual commissioners, but also ultimately as a commission, where this plan falls in your thinking today. And does it meet what you're looking for today, or is there a need, is there something missing that needs to be addressed? I think as we talked about the previous meeting, the Board of Trustees did include funding in the 2023 budget for a master plan update. That was done simply because there may be a need for an update. If the money's not used, it's not used, but the resources are there to pursue amendments or updates to the plan as you may choose.
Yeah, I think unless each of us spent the holidays poring over this document in exceptional detail and feel like we're ready to make those types of, it's gonna be a discussion that's probably gonna take place over some time, I would think. But we have some time tonight to start the discussion. I guess I don't want to feel like I'm that guy, but I realize I am that guy, so I'm going to point out. In your memo, towards the beginning, you said that the relevance and importance of the master plan to the work of the Planning Commission and the township staff cannot be understated. I'm wondering if you meant overstated.
Yes. This is what happens when you're moving along fairly quickly through that's overstated.
Well, brought a smile to my face.
It is absolutely essential, let's put it that way.
All right, so you've heard the introduction, and this is before us, and you also included some the township's I guess aspirational goals, and then
that section, just to give you some background, the township board operates under a policy governance model. Where the board has adopted essentially a policy manual for themselves and to direct the work of the township manager and through the township manager, the staff. And as part of that policy manual, I included a link in the report. It's certainly an interesting read because it defines the roles of the board, the roles of the manager, and through him, the township administration. And it sets limits on both, and it creates a lot of certainty, actually, in how this government operates. I appreciate very much. It was one of the things that attracted me to come to work for the township. Looking at the website and reviewing what was there, I was fascinated by this decision that had been made a number of years ago to use this format. As part of that policy governance model, Section 1 is just called ends, or sometimes referred to as global ends. And what these are, you might think of these as the desired outcomes that the Board of Trustees has identified as the desired outcomes that the township should be aiming to complete. So for number 1, Union Township exists to support a sustainable community through the most effective use of resources that achieve the highest quality of life. That's essentially the top level of this set of desired outcomes. And then from there, it gets more detailed, down to the point of creating bike lanes and crosswalks on roads is one of the policies under item 1.3. All residents may enjoy a safe environment. So these are the things that we focus on as the township administration to achieve in our day-to-day work. And in fact, this is what we report back to the board on a monthly and an annual basis in terms of how we have achieved these ends or taken actions towards achieving it. So I shared this with you because these have been adopted by the Board of Trustees. They update them periodically. You can in fact see down at the bottom the timing was updated as recently as November. And so it can give you an idea of what Board of Trustees' focus is related to some of these policies that have a land use or development-related component to them.
Rodney, when we talk about master planning, I mean, I always kind of blur the lines between master planning and then ordinance as well. And I know that we have done ordinance review, but I mean, so I guess when I think about like, one of the areas that I think about in terms of our master planning that I think we could have at least more robust conversation is that we've had at the national level, we've had a major law passed in the past few months that has created some long-term significant incentives for things like renewable energy, both inside the home and outside the home. And I don't think that we necessarily in our master planning speak to that, but obviously ordinance governs some of those issues as well. So is this kind of a hand-in-hand type of thing where it's we talk about it in master planning, and then if that necessitates a change in ordinance, then we pursue those on a case-by-case basis or that sort of thing? Or how does that work when there's kind of a foot on both sides of that? You know what I mean?
Well, I think, I mentioned the report, the master plan is a foundation under our zoning ordinance in particular,
Right.
but also even under subdivision regulations and water and sewer districts. It's a foundation under a number of elements of the work of the township. The benefit of the master discussing in master plans, it's policy related. This is it's a desired outcome. Just as these board of trustees ends are, the master plan is what do we want our community to be like 5, 10, 20 years from now, and then how do we get there? So in our master plan we have that implementation element that was included. That can also be more robust even than was included in the 2018 plan. But that's how do we get from where we are to where we want to be. But having the discussion at a high level, at a kind of a high level policy level of what do we want our community to be like at this point down the road, can be it can be freeing somewhat. The problem with ordinances is you get into the details. What can we legally require? Where are we going to run afoul of a state law or some case law element or something? But when we're talking policy, we're really talking about what do we want?
Yeah.
Sidewalks. What do we want? Where do we want sidewalks? Where do we not need sidewalks? That's a policy decision. So I think having the high level conversation can be very, very helpful. With the understanding, of course, ultimately that high level policy might be implemented through ordinance, or it might be implemented through the West EDA providing some funding for a project. I mean, there's various ways to implement things. So I wouldn't get into the details of the implementation, but really, what do we want? What do we need?
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. And I was just trying to clarify, like it, and maybe it's just the natural ebb and flow. You go through your master planning, and then once you kind of get that wrapped up, in not too far in the future, we say, oh, we should give our ordinance review and make sure that it conforms or at least aligns with the master planning as well. And then it's just this cycle that you're going through: master planning and then ordinance, and then master planning and then ordinance. So that makes sense.
Yeah, typically as part of the master plan, the 2018 plan didn't include this because there was a deliberate effort made to keep the document short.
Yeah.
That was one of the goals of that project, was to keep it short. And I don't disagree with doing that. But many master plans will have a zoning plan element that will actually have, these are things that need to be changed or updated in the zoning ordinance to implement the plan. We don't necessarily have to have that in the master plan, but it could be a document that comes out of it. The process. In fact, this happened with our East and West EDA districts. 2021, we updated the development plans and tax increment financing plans for both districts. They were about to expire, so it's a requirement that we deal with that. And in working with the consultant on that project, they recommended that we do exactly that some elements that might have gone into the development plan, detailed projects, be kept out as a separate implementation document. Both so the plan was a little more streamlined, but also so it was easier to work with those projects. They weren't kind of cast in stone into this document that won't be touched for another decade or more. And I think similarly here we could do something similar with the master plan in terms of some of the implementation elements could be an Excel spreadsheet or some kind of companion document that we work from.
Okay.
Any other comments from commissioners at the moment? What is our February meeting looking like? Is it too early to tell, really?
We don't have any projects in the pipeline for the February meeting at this point.
Okay. So it sounds like we have a window, and of course, it typically would be the case in the middle of winter like this. It sounds like we have a pretty good window for having some sort of extended discussion of this at our February meeting. So I would really encourage you, now's the time to start, paging through this in your spare time and, referring to the document here from, the memo here from Rodney and the other materials, and start making some notes in terms of things you think should, if there's anything in here that you think should definitely be revised, write that down. And, other parts of it that may look okay. I think it's a good document. I definitely don't think we're in the same position we were in 2017, which was, we had a document which in some ways maybe already felt a little bit outdated, and we ended up in this whole, it just became a complete rewrite. And so I don't think we're there, but, we do have a section in here about goals, and so it's hard to assume that, that's going to be the same 5 years and 5 years and 5 years. So there probably are some things in here that we will at least end up tweaking, but that would be my suggestion, would be to target our February meeting for that discussion.
Well, the last time this was done, is that what you did? Everybody just kind of read through it, or did you break it off into sections, or were there recommendations from staff that, hey, you look at this or look at that,
Well, I think the issue, part of the issue was the document that we ended up with in 2011 it definitely had its good points. But I think it didn't have a lot of the modern, like, there weren't a lot of illustrations, and it wasn't, like, linkable and with the hyperlinks and all this sort of thing. So there was a feeling that it should be modernized anyway. And so I think the decision was made pretty early on, if I remember correctly, to find I remember us going through the RFP and looking at the outside firms and so on, to the consultants to come in and work with us on it. So I can't give you exact, like, when was the point where we said we're going to go down this road, but I think we started down that road pretty early, is what I remember. I don't remember a lot of discussion first and then saying, oh, we need to do this major thing. I think there was just a feeling that somehow what we ended up with the last time it seemed fine at the time, but it didn't seem like what we needed even by 2017.
I came in about halfway through the master planning last time. I mean, I guess I'm of the general opinion that for a community our size, which is, not small, it's not huge, but it's not small. I feel like every 5 years, if we don't have anything more to say or anything to clarify or kind of direction to go, that we could expand upon with at least an evolving master plan, I think we're probably we're probably missing some opportunities. So I do think that I think that the document we have is a good document. I don't know what the document prior to that looked like, but I also think that there's some opportunities that we could continue to kind of evolve and expand and just kind of recognize the world changes every 5 years. So I think there's plenty to kind of chew on.
Rodney, the previous plan has a community snapshot at the end and a market analysis. Are those things that are created during the process of review, or are those things that you can develop early on so that we have those in relation to reviewing the master plan for potential revision?
Where are you looking?
Table of contents, it says appendices. community snapshot existing conditions report, which might be based on the demographics from this most recent census. And I think you had given us something on that previously. And there's also a market analysis.
You're looking at the 2011 plan?
No.
No, this is on the.
It also says published
This is on
separately.
the table of contents page on the side, on the right.
Oh, over here, oh, there, okay. Yeah.
It just lists those as appendices. I just wonder when those were created, or if you have any, or maybe Peter remembers, if that was part of the early process, because it seems like that would be useful to have us for review before we're reviewing the actual plan.
Yeah.
It's probably new census data, it's not a different thing, could be updated.
I would assume that the snapshot was something that was done early. Basically, that's exactly right. It's the census data, that type of population, housing type information, income. Like I said, this was part of keeping the actual plan small, because often that takes up about a third or more of the master plan when it's in the document. I don't know anything about the market analysis. The public participation summary would be just that. That would be a report back on what was done as part of the various public elements of the plan. Comments that were received, surveys or anything like that. Actually, that last one brings up a good point. The Board of Trustees has indicated an interest in doing a survey. Periodically, the township has surveyed the residents, and there is some interest in doing that again. It's nothing firmed up yet, but that could be something, if the board chooses to pursue that would be beneficial for us as well.
I'm sure this body would like to, if there is a survey done, would like to give our feedback on what the survey contains.
Yeah. Yeah, as that moves forward, I'll certainly keep you updated on that.
Other comments from commissioners? Okay. Well, I think we have one of our agenda items for February pretty much lined up. So basically read and bring ideas. And then we can also discuss, I think, then whether we want to, have subcommittees or how we want to tackle it. But I would say mainly just bring ideas. All right. So now we have extended public comment. If there's anyone who would like to address the planning commission on any item, whether it was on tonight's agenda or not, you're invited to do so at this time. We ask you to give us your name and address for the minutes and limit your comments to 5 minutes on any issue. Extended public comment is open at 8:23. And we do not have a large audience tonight, so we'll go ahead and close that back up for another month. Final board comment. So a few things. First of all, there is three of us, whose terms are expiring on February 15th. And just by coincidence, it's this three. And so I just want to remind everyone that the policy is that you continue to serve until you're replaced. So our terms expire February 15th. The February meeting is going to be the 21st. So if the Board of Trustees does not appoint either us to continue or someone else, then you can plan on being here and participating. And we had, as Rodney pointed out, we had a member in the not too distant past who served probably close to 6 months, I think, just because during the pandemic it was, I guess, harder to appoint new people. But so anyway, plan on that. And then also, it is that season. I got the brochure from MAP, Michigan Association of Planning. There are a variety of trainings coming up, including, again, 2 in Mount Pleasant. And it's unusual that Mount Pleasant 2 years in a row. Unfortunately, these are during the middle of the week, and they're during the day. There's two of them. There's site plan review, March 1st, 11 a.m. to 3:30, and then the master planning process, March 1st, 4 to 8:30. So, but anyway, I don't know if you must get copies of this as well. So maybe if we can send that out to people, and Township will pay if you want to attend, one of these workshops. There's also a couple in Frankenmuth, and there are some that are virtual, and those are on other dates. So plenty of opportunities. Okay. Any comments from board members?
I assume we'll be notified if somebody has been appointed to take their seat then?
Yes, we'll make sure.
Okay, so I show, I have the nameplate and have somebody else. Kind of embarrassing, but, so.
Have the
So
three,
we will be notified then?
Yeah.
Okay. And if we don't hear from you, then we'll assume that we're still,
We'll notify you either way.
yeah, okay.
have either of you submitted an application to be on it again, or have interest in being on it again?
I have not submitted.
So you're looking to be done,
Yeah.
okay? And Chair, are you,
Yeah, I submitted an application.
okay, all right.
I think,
So, yes.
if I recall, I think there are three applications currently. There was a resident that submitted an application as well.
Oh, okay.
So who knows? There's still time left for more.
Right. So I guess I also just want to take the opportunity to recognize and thank Jack for his year of service on the plant. Or was it a year? Or how
I
much?
don't know if it was
Couple
close to
years?
that, but I don't know if it was a full year.
I know you were appointed to fill an existing term, right?
So probably close to a year.
We appreciated your input and hope it's been a memorable experience that you'll carry with you into the
It is at that.
future. And then we'll miss you when you, think of us when you're home on Tuesday evenings and it's getting towards 9 o'clock, 9:30, and you're enjoying your evening, and just think about it.
Thank
We'll
you.
be sitting here pouring through.
Yeah, I could do that. Maybe I'll do that too. Make faces at you.
Other comments from commissioners? All right,
Yeah,
so-
actually, I had somewhat of a request for Rodney and Peter, and I don't know what the actual proper procedure is, but the sidewalks and pathways are, the current and anticipated, and then kind of the requested information. It's something as a board, on the Board of Trustees, we've talked about. I don't know if it's worth seeing if that could be just, not that we have to have discussion, but just put in, because that's in our board packet, because again, we've had several discussions about that, and this actually does a very nice job of explaining what's done, what's we're working on, and I think there's a few other little items that you may decide to add to that. It might be helpful for us to see that.
I'll talk with Mark about
Yeah,
that. We do normally, as part of the annual report, we put in the projects that were completed when we do the annual report to the board. I'll talk with Mark about it. I certainly can address it, even if there's not something in the packet, I can address it verbally, the projects we completed. As part of, because I'll be doing monthly report.
I just know lately it seems to come up a little bit more and more often, so with the information right here and right now and fresh, whatever you both come up with is, so I throw
Yeah,
that out.
happy to.
Okay, anything else?
Yeah, I just had another question in regards to the annual report. So in the process that we have, people that come in with a napkin idea, if they have a meeting with you and go over what they can or can't do, whether it's Rodney or Peter, I'm not sure who's meeting with them, or both of you, I'm not sure the procedure, but, so if they walk out the door, is there ever any follow-up with them at all, or is it only if they reach out to the township?
It entirely depends on the project. In some cases, they provide information. We do have follow-up. In some cases, they don't want follow-up. They simply want their questions answered and move on. You know, there are, in the economic development world, there are site selectors. These are folks that are going out and identifying locations for large projects. This is a large industrial project and such. Some site selectors want a lot of interaction with that local government. They want to, you know, essentially have a relationship with that. They went back and forth. Others, they literally come in, tell me what I need to know, and I'm out of here. And so in the same realm with smaller projects, we can have that full range of activities. Some people simply want information, then they go and make their decision. They don't want a lot of contact. Others, we're happy to work with them, and we prefer to work with them on an ongoing basis where we can. But Ed said it entirely depends on the project and the individuals involved.
Yes, it doesn't sound like there's really any follow-up on the township's part unless the person or the developer or whoever's inquiring initiates that.
That's not what I said, no.
No, well, that's what it sounded like.
That's not what I said at all.
Oh, then maybe explain it more detailed for me. Maybe I misunderstood. Well, obviously I did.
As I said, the question of whether there's follow-up entirely depends on the preferences of the parties involved. In some cases, they do want to have that follow-up, and there is discussion back and forth. In other cases, they don't. They want to come in, they want to get their questions answered, and then they go and make whatever decisions they're going to make. So it depends on the individuals involved, as it does in any human interaction. You know, some people want that communication, others do not. We certainly respect that, but we're not passive. We are as active as we can be within that realm of some people simply do not want to have that communication.
You know, and I understand that. There's some people, like you said, they just come in, they just want their questions answered, and that's it. And they may say, I don't need anything else from you, I'm good. I just didn't know, obviously, every person that comes in is going to be different, but if there is an open door, so to speak, that would allow for that follow-up to happen, whether they said they wanted follow-up or not, if they blatantly said, hey, don't contact me again, I get it. I wouldn't follow up with them, but if there really isn't, they just came in, asked some questions, and that was it, I think, you know, me as a real estate agent, if I had a buyer do that, I'd be following up in 2 to 4 weeks, or whatever that time period that I think might be a reasonable amount of time. Just to see, I mean, I'm trying to, as a real estate agent, drum up business. I think as an economic development coordinator, you're trying to do the same thing for our township. So I'm just thinking, just again, wondering, because I'm not here every day watching over your shoulder, seeing what you do every day. So I'm just trying to find out, is there any follow-up to those types of things? Sounds like in some cases yes, in some cases no.
That's right.
Would that be fair?
That would be fair, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Okay, well, we've completed our agenda for January, and we'll meet again February 21st, so enjoy the rest of the month, and meeting is adjourned.